Hello and welcome to NewsNight. I am Ladi Akeredoluale. Thanks for being with us. Nigeria's political development is in our line of sight on the program. My guest says military incursion into the nation's governance structure has caused enduring damage to its developmental process. My guest also insists that a restructuring of the federation to make it a truly federal republic based on equity, justice, and fair play is a sure way of ensuring Nigeria grows to everyone's advantage. Newsnight talks to elder statesman, the Secretary General of the National Democratic Coalition, NADECO, Mr. Ayo Opadokun. Mr. Ayo Opadokun, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure to be here, and greetings to the viewers also.
Let's begin with politics. I know that security is what everybody seems to talk about now, but for the purpose of this interview, I'd like to start with politics. As someone who has observed, watched, and in some instances participated in Nigeria's politics for quite a while, would you say we have taken some steps, incrementally at least, towards good practice in 2021 from when we started it in 1999?
My response is negative. It is certainly no. And I'm sorry to even remind our viewers that what we had since 1999 remained civilian governance, not democratic governance. No matter the contrary view that some elements may have to, as to my position, I've not seen any significant democratic activity that have been taken by the successive rulers of Nigeria, and that is not really to be a strange occurrence, because the first man who the military foisted upon us in 1999 was a retired military general who was a former military dictator. And everything about him throughout his 8-year tenure remained military. In fact, he militarized his own political party. Remember that he brought in Amadu Ali, then he brought in Bode George, a deputy national chairman for the South. So, and he had quite a large number of his colleagues and associates and subordinates in government. Then he knew that he fostered an alien man to take over from him, perhaps hoping that he will govern by remote control if that fellow could not respond to the dictate of the office. And eventually, you know what happened, the rest is history. And what again do we have today is another military dictator in the name of now President Muhammadu Buhari. So, and all their activities have really not yielded anything to democratic norms. Popular will has no relevance as far as they are concerned. You remember when questions were asked from General Obasanjo as to when Buhari himself asked him, where is the power with which you spend over $16 billion upon? He said we should go to the books written for him. That's why we could find answer. So you can, I hope you can appreciate the fact that we have never had really a democratic governance, because the military remains in control since this violently overthrew Prime Minister Alhaji Abubakar Tafawa Balewa's government on January 15, 1966. They deliberately, they abrogated, they suspended the negotiated federal constitution upon which Nigeria secured its independence, and they substituted for it series of military decrees, which are deunitarized and centralized governance in Nigeria till today. And They are not ready for us to be democratized. Therefore, that is why Nigeria remains a country, not a nation.
From your assessment, I noticed that you left out Dr. Goodluck Jonathan in that assessment. You talked instead about General
I was not
Obasanjo. Why have you left him out?
Obasanjo, no, but well, if you want, I was thinking, I wanted to be brief upon that. He knew what he did in case of Dr. Jonathan. You know that my friend Alamesi, I just brought in Dr. Jonathan, where I was teaching, I think, virology or something at the University of Port Harcourt to be his running mate. And when Obasanjo was fed up with the agitation for resource control, he wanted to dislodge Alamesia, and he did extra legal, very illegal thing to remove Alamesia from office. And as Jonathan was settling down now to be able to run for governorship on his own term, Obasanjo asked him to come and be running mate to Yar'Adua, and that's how he came into office. And you knew the rest is now history. The truth of the matter is that we have not been allowed to democratize. These ones have no regard for democracy. As Nigeria had remained one of the underdeveloping countries till date, the problem that we have is the divide between autocracy and democracy. And we know whenever the military are captured any geopolitical territory or political space, everything within such everything within such geographical space become part of the spoil of office. So all of us have become part of the spoil of office, and they are taking over. Nobody had been spared.
Some of those who have listened to you, or some of the people listening to you, will raise the question that from what you said so far, you appear to be placing a great deal of the blame on the military incursion into politics. But they will also be thinking that the military incursion into politics itself possibly could have been facilitated by the difficulty the civilians, democratically elected civilian politicians, had in governing the country at the time, with especially everything that happened in pre-1966, in 79 to 83, and then thereafter when we had the June 12, 1993 presidential election, and then up until 1999. I'm wondering if you consider this as a fair comment, that the civilian rulers are as guilty as the military for what has happened to Nigeria's politics.
I hope you'll be true to your conscience. And I'll ask all Nigerians to be true to their consciences. The truth of the matter is that you are begging the issue and you are chasing shadows rather than facing the realities.
How so?
The military subverted, the military staged a military violent insurrection against the elected government. And they claimed that the civilians were not doing well. That was why they came. In fact, Nzogu, who organized the event in Kaduna, said they staged the coup to stop 10%ers. I'm asking you, what is the percentage today? The first question you ask yourself is this: is there any job in the world that does not need tutelage, experience? The military had done worse things. They've perverted a system. They perverted their own institution. They've corrupted everywhere. In fact, in their own profession, the man who became Nigerian head of state was professionally advised not to cross over to Onitsha. He did. Several thousand Nigerians, military people, perished in that endeavor. He was not brought to book. They went to Asaba. His team went to Asaba and killed all the people who came to hail him as a messiah. Nothing had happened to that level. I was just happy with the editorial of the Nation in recent times, we raised that matter. The military had done so many professional misconducts that were totally very ruinous to the Nigerian state. Yet that institution had not been abrogated. They've not been sent home. And I ask you, have you ever asked a carpenter to go and drive an armored car? Or will you ask a tailor to go and conduct surgery?
Is it possible that the military could have done all this havoc that you say they have without civilians participating?
That was not the question. You are not asking that question, and I will respond. In fact, I must confess to you, I've just finished writing a book titled The Gun Hegemony. And all the collaborations from the civil society, particularly the public servants, the traditional rulers, or religious leaders, and then the academia, have taken them on board one by one, the role each one played. But you should put the blame where really it could be legally and responsibly made. Somebody has the final authority. As soon as the military centralized and unitarized in Nigeria, the levers of power was centrally controlled by the commander-in-chief, and you live or perish at his command. So the fact that the civilians eventually got over and they was obeying the dictates of the military, you cannot blame those of them who could not resist the temptation of, if you cannot beat them, you join them. For example, the academia, those of them, many of them who are totally failures in their various disciplines, they quickly joined the military. They were writing stories that will endear them to the military. And because people like that, again, were made members of different committees and the likes, and they become stinkingly rich in the process. But they lost their value. They lost their relevance. Traditional rulers who jump on the trail to utilize them, they use them at the moment when it suited the military. And when they dare move an inch against the military, then they are punished. You remember what Buhari did to the M of Kano, Ado Bayero, and Sijuwade? Banned them, restricted them for 6 months in their home state. And then for the public servants who collaborated, they did so because they, that was once upon a time, that was what they called the general orders. But just before Murtala staged his coup against Gawan, he had a problem as the federal commissioner for telecommunication. They wanted to award a contract, telephone contract, and he was the minister in charge of communication. And when tenders were submitted, the technical committee that opened that contract and treated it did their job. But it was under a very distinguished professional, Engineer Oladele. And they recommended 3. But the first they recommended was not the choice of Murtala Mohammed. And he went to go, the then the national chairman of the Public Service Commission, Alhaji Sule Katagum, who told him that it was impossible for him to sack Engineer Akedele, that what should happen is that he should issue him a query. And that query should not be submitted to the Public Service Commission, and then they would treat the matter. He was very angry that a bloody civilian could not accede to his request. He went to Gawan, and Gawan told him the same thing, that he was not, even he, Gawan, the head of state, had no control. He could not just go ahead now to go and sack any senior public servant, particularly even a director. He was angry. But you remember that as soon as he took over, in his first national, so-called World Press Conference, he disbanded that committee, sacked all of them, Alhaji Sule Katagum and the rest, And Akindele was one of the people he first of all sacked. And that was what really brought corruption into the Nigeria Public Service. Because people now saw it, that what they thought was a general order, that they had a permanent job, was no more permanent. So from that day, nobody ever won a contract from Nigeria government any longer without having collaborated with the civil service, the servants, the middle cadres, and the upper layer. That was what has happened. So if you are accounting on the basis of the fact that civilians collaborated with them, it was because they have to do so in order for them to survive.
Well, the lesson in history is instructive, but let me bring you back to the current and maybe bring a variation to the question I asked at the very beginning. Between 1999 and 2021, you have said you don't consider that the country has taken any kind of significant step towards becoming a functioning democracy, that all we've had is civilian rule. In that context, if I ask you then what is happening in reference to electoral reform, because the most manifest, the most obvious thing we can see about democracy in practice is the fact that elections take place periodically. Most recently, the National Assembly had done a couple of amendments, including allowing the electronic transmission of results to encourage transparency. You don't think this is something good, or perhaps are there other things that they could have done that they've left out?
Thank you very much. I dare say to you, if you want to listen, that I regard whatever is wrong, the perversion and the corruption of the electoral system, as just was one fallout of the centralization and unitarization of the Nigerian state. In the First Republic, when we had a federal system of government, each region organized its own election. You don't have this kind of unitarized, centralized body that is under the imprimatur of one man. And I hope you will remember that I was the convener of the Coalition of Democrats for Electoral Reform. And we campaigned vigorously for almost about 7 years, between 2008 and upward, for an electoral reform. But I can tell you, my dear brother, that the Nigerian state is not ready for any credible election. So all that you are talking about from the so-called National Assembly is all facade. It remains gimmicks to deceive Nigerians, to make Nigerians have false sense of belonging. Look, Yar'Adua, as the president, when he was sworn in, he recognized that the election that brought him into office was faulty, that it was a perverted election. He set up Justice Muhammad Uwais Electoral Reform Panel. And that committee had collaboration support from development partners, agencies globally. They brought in money, they brought in the logistics, they brought in personnel to enrich the job and their recommendation. 3 critical recommendations of that body was that the sitting executive should not appoint the electoral umpire. 2 was that until every judicial intervention on any election is concluded, nobody should be sworn in. Let me take the first one, that the sitting executive should not appoint the electoral umpire. You know what we are doing? It's like a saying that ICC Shooting Stars, Rangers International, we are going to play football. And you ask Rangers not to appoint the electoral umpire, to elect the referee. You know the results. So walking to the answer. And the truth of the matter is that in any given place where you want a credible, acceptable election that will meet international best practices, you must make the electoral umpire to be so independent of any one group or a group of people, so that there will be inherent confidence in such a body that they will deliver. In the recommendation of Justice Uwais, he said that body, anyone wanted to be an electoral umpire should apply, and the Judicial Service Commission should sort out the names and the qualifications, and they will make 3 recommendations to the Council of State, which will now recommend 1 to the Senate for confirmation. That had been rejected. In fact, the what you call the totally watered down bill that was made by Yaradua was a kind of child's play. It was making fun of us. And since then, nothing had been done. The only one thing they've done thus far, it was said that now they have agreed that funding of INEC should be on the first line for charge. But to be candid, how do we, from the CODAD perspective, our recommendation is that electoral umpire should be composed of all contesting political parties, and they should decide rotationally who will be their chairman, so that the sitting government will not control such an electoral body. You needed to have people's buy-in and confidence in the electoral body. So the idea of look, what Professor Jega did in office, when it was announced, I was the only one who spoke strongly against him, that he was unfit. Yet he remained in office, and he did quite a number of terrible things, if not because we were on our toes, criticizing him, exposing him regularly. Even the few things that perhaps he succeeded in doing, put it up. For example, look, here was a man when Professor the man before him, the Igbo guy, was the national chairman of INEC, because the 2 of them were together in the thank you very much. You know, in the political association, in the political teachers association of Nigeria, they were together. So when Morris was in the office, the guy was his resource person. So, and I said the guy was equally a member of Justice Uwais Electoral Reform panel, who recommended that no sitting executive should appoint the electoral umpire. And he signed that recommendation, that if he were a gentleman, even if he were offered that post, he should have rejected it. And what will he do? When he was in office, there were 10 internal committees that he set up. 8 of them were chairmaned by people from his own area. He himself chaired 2 or 3. That's the kind of thing that we had. So I'm saying to you that Nigeria is not ready to organize a credible election that meets international best practices. They are just pretending. So for me, really, I don't really waste my time, because the popular will of the Nigerian people is not even considered. The military.
Don't you think that the issue of electronic voting and transmission of election results, which so many people in your group have described as an antidote to rigging, is a good omen?
Well, I'm sorry to say that, see, the idea of imagining that election solves all problems is really turning logic upside down. In the circumstance that we are in, election will not solve the Nigerian crisis. People like us believe that what you regard today as constitution is a forgery. It remains a forgery. That constitution claims in its preamble that we the people, and we, all of us, are aware except the makers. They know that it was not Nigerian that made it. It was made by a caucus of the military. And even those who contested the election never knew the content of the constitution that would guide them in office until they were sworn in before that constitution was promulgated. And it was brought into existence by Decree 24 of 1999. So people like us regard all institutions emanating from such a constitution as illegality up to tomorrow. So that's why we don't have any confidence in it. Our insistence is that we must go back to the federal constitutional arrangement upon which Nigeria secured its independence. Our ethnic nationalities have been campaigning vigorously for that. And the idea of President Buhari imagining that all those are nonsensical or tribal matters, and he keeps behaving as if they count as nothing. I hope that they will learn that, see, under the United Nations Charter of Human Rights,
the constitution that you spoke about earlier on in the interview, the one that is currently in existence, and which, of course, you described as a fraud, but that there were others which were negotiated in the pre-1960, 1966 period, which talk about the regions. We can't bring those back now,
right,
can we, and use because of various political developments since then?
In fact, not only that, because political system is always a ongoing working business. The 1963 constitutions, which the military abrogated and suspended, they will form the basis upon which all amendments will be made. And for us, for people like us, we now recognize the fact and the reality that all federal constitutions in many other areas of the world, including Germany, including Canada, including almost about 9 different places where they are genuinely running their government on federal constitution, the circumstances of their country will impact strongly on which choice they make. For us, our federation must be constituted on the basis of a linguistic identification. That is what is, because under that United Nations Charter on Human Rights that was enunciated and approved in 1948, each person, each group is entitled legally and constitutionally to self-determination. And that law says no one has a right to dominate the other person. The African Charter on People's Rights, under Section 6, Section 12, Section 19, Section 22, Section 31, clearly state virtually the same thing. And that was adopted in 1997, 1998 in Addis Ababa. No one has a right to dominate the other person. What the military had done is to dominate us and to tell us that they can use the force of arms to subjugate us and use the force of arms to keep what does not belong to them permanently. And that's what we are against.
That brings me to another issue. You are a chieftain and the General Secretary of NADECO, that's National Democratic Coalition. Let me use this opportunity, of course, to condole with you on the demise of Rear Admiral Ndubisi Kanu, who was chairman of NADECO. But that brings us to the issue of restructuring. Do you think restructuring could possibly compromise the unity of Nigeria?
It is not, unfortunately. The proponent of saying that restructuring will lead to disunity or dismemberment of the country. Most of them, I dare say authoritatively, that they are beneficiary of this warped, skewed, lopsided national structure. Anyone who is genuinely interested in the progress and development of Nigeria, and the indices are there for anyone to see. Just the late former Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Dahiru Mustafa, at the Chief Bankole Alani Bankole's birthday in Abeokuta, said Nigeria is more divided today than it was before the Nigerian Civil War. And what is the reason for it? You have unitarized and centralized the Nigerian state to the detriment of the other ethnic nationalities. It has been sectionally controlled by a group of people, and when they talk, they continue to chase shadow instead of the substance. They tell you, oh, it's about leadership. Once you can have a good leader, a fair leader, then that will be the antidote to it. That is not true. No one wants to be subjugated and remain subdued permanently. And that is the reason why what you're having today in Nigeria, and we kept on alerting the Nigerian nation, restore Nigeria to federal constitutional governance to save Nigeria. So today, Nigeria is lying to itself. Nigeria is lying to the international community that it is a federal government of Nigeria. There's nothing federal in the Nigerian setting today. What you have is a unitary government. The totality of the lives of most Nigerians are controlled by the central government through series of decrees, which they have made when they were in office in Agbada. And I dare remind you and all listeners that since the army captured Nigeria on January 15, 1966, at their intervention, they spent 13 years at that time before they returned power, so-called to Alhaji Shehu Shagari, who was one of the people from whom they seized power on January 15, 1966. Then Buhari came, and from his own time until the return to another so-called civilian government, they spent another 15 years. That is to say, the military in uniform spent 13 plus 15 years in military uniform. That's 28 years. And now, since the so-called civilian government, when they have changed from uniform to Agbada, Obasanjo had done 8 years. Buhari, by 2023, will spend 8 years. That will be another 16. So military in uniform, 28 years. Military in Agbada, 16 years. 28 plus 16 means 44 out of 61 years of Nigeria's so-called post-independence. So they have colored the Nigerian state, and they have passioned out and parceled out all that belong to Nigeria among themselves. That's what I'm saying openly. We lost our sweat, we lost our blood, we lost our possession, we lost our liberty. Some of us are martyred even for this experiment they are messing up. We cannot be watching idly while they are refusing to make Nigeria to respond to its divine call as the most populous black nation of the world. The black race expects Nigeria to provide leadership. So we have failed the black world when we cannot even govern ourselves. How can you reconcile?
My apology for interrupting you. I have spoken to some of your colleagues in the fight for the restoration of civilian rule in the country, that is the one that took place before 1999. And they admitted to me that they believe now that it was an error that those who were at the forefront of the fight did not participate in the ensuing electoral process. They took a backseat instead. and that with the benefit of hindsight, that was wrong. Do you agree with that?
I don't. I dare say that the element, those who were neck deep into our organization, anyone who really knew what was happening would not give that kind of summary as an existential problem of the country. The truth of the matter was that when General Abacha died the way he died, and a month thereafter, Chief M.K. Abiola died the way he died, the man who took over power, General Absalom Abubakar, was not willing, because he knew that the situation was not conducive. He was not willing to spend any long time. In fact, for us in ADECO, because anyone who would remain credible couldn't have been participating, couldn't have been running for contracts and the likes, talking in the afternoon, going in the evening to go and beg and prostrate for the rulers. It took us a lot of time between those of us at home, ADECO at home, and ADECO abroad, to agree even to participate in Absalami's transition. And when we took that decision, the decision was, okay, if you are going to participate at all, because the insistence of majority of us was that we must first of all have a sovereign national conference to discuss and resolve the Nigerian national question once and for all. The national question, just one, but of two coins, the two sides. To ask the question, do we want to belong to Nigeria? The other question has not been answered tomorrow. The second question is, if as a result of prolonged period of relationship, of relating with each other, the answer perhaps will be in the affirmative. Say, can we live together? Then we will take a decision, discuss what will be the modus operandi, the rule of engagement. Then it will be, you bring the ideas as to how you want to be governed. I bring the ideas to how I want to be governed. That is what we package together, and then we can now write an homegrown constitution, which will be autochthonous. On the basis of that, we can now have a constitution that we submit to the Nigerian people in a plebiscite. And then we now have a constitution upon which most Nigerians can subscribe. This one, people never subscribe to it. It's been forced upon us, just as the British did. That is what the Nigerian, the local imperialists, that's what they've been doing since the military captured power. So the fact that we were not in a position to engage in running for office, just as it happened in South Africa, some people were they were even doing a very wrong analogy, imagining how many years did the ANC played his act before it became the party in power. Almost 100 years. And when Abiola died, and it was clear that something had to give, what we submitted to Abdulsalami was that it should allow a government of national unity to be established, to be headed by Abiola, who won that election. So what I'm saying, therefore, is that it was not because we were not mindful of the effect of allowing the military and their agents, their fellow collaborators, loyalists, sympathizers, confederates, to take over power. We need that. That was why at the final lot, we said, okay, we should engage ourselves in our own catchment area here, so that the apologists among us here, so that they will not say they have gotten themselves elected and then they said they are speaking for our people. That was why we ran for office here, and none of the ones who became governors in the Yoruba in the 6th state here could have told you that he spent any huge money to become governors then, because it was our own credibility that we laid before our people. And we said immediately what we should do is to start using the platform that we had to campaign for national restructuring, which we did. We went to the House of Assembly of each state under our control, and they passed that resolution and sent to the National Assembly. So we are not unmindful of the situation, but the situation were dissimilar.
Let's talk about a bit of contemporary issues now. A guest from the Southeast I had on the program, Dr. Chukwemeka Ezife,
Opadokun
is advocating power shift to the Southeast. What do you make of that?
Well, for me, and for Nadeko, let me restate the obvious. We are not interested to waste our time on misadventure and misdirected activity. What is the most important to Nigeria today is that Nigeria should return to a federal system of government. This running rat race for 2023 will bring us nowhere. And I ask the question, all the elections that have been held since 1999, what are the significant benefits that had accrued? Or what significant benefits have they impacted on the Nigerian people? I dare say, I cannot see anything of significance. A while ago, during this discussion, I've raised the matter. I do not know of anywhere in the world where we spend $16 billion and you not see the quantum, significant quantum of the result of such expenses. Nigeria has spent over $60 billion on power supply, yet darkness is what we have. What kind of a country is that? We are a country of opposites. That's the unfortunate thing. We export what we don't have. Credible election. We import what we have. Petroleum. What kind of country is our own?
I can't end this interview without me asking you yet again, this time about judiciary. You're a frontline lawyer. You're one of the top lawyers, certainly one of the most experienced lawyers in the country. And there are those who have pointed out that the judiciary appears to have been increasingly neglected, and that it's only when there's a situation, particularly with the ruling class having problems with the law, that they remember that the judiciary is there. Is it true that they are neglected, and what can be done about this?
Having captured the Nigerian state, the Nigerian army had negatively impacted on every public institution, inclusive of the judiciary. And they've done so, they've undermined the overall responsibility, constitutional responsibility of that arm of government, to the extent that the people there themselves significantly are not living to the bidding of their oath of office. It really started seriously during the time of President Ibrahim Babangida, when he started buying baby Benz for justices of the Supreme Court. And quite a lot of things that happened between then and now, to the extent that, you see, because National Judicial Council is presided over by the current Chief Justice of Nigeria, it's a misnomer that ought to change. And many of the judges have to kowtow to the military and civilian rulers in order for them to have some private benefits here and there. Those who give rulings that are not palatable to the government of the day, many a times they will not be reckoned with when some largesse are being given. Let's give it to Asiwaju Bola Tinubu when he came here. we sat down as the chairman of the policy committee for his government. Part of the thing that we resolved was to improve on the judiciary seriously. And we did that having regard to the fact that we need that judiciary is supposed to be the arbiter. But what has happened today is unbecoming. A situation where you have judges now having 2 billion naira in their account. You ask the question, where did he manage to get it? And there are cases going on where senior lawyers are the ones now taking bribe to judges. So a lot of things that happened. Once upon a time, Nigeria judiciary was the envy of the Commonwealth countries. So much that the likes of Justice Udo Udoma, the likes of Justice Akinola Aguda, and the likes, they preside over the affairs of Uganda and other places. Dr. Olu Onagorua even wrote the constitution of one of the countries in the eastern part of Africa. That's not the same thing any longer, because particularly since that Babangida regime, when he was banning and unbanning candidates for office, for gubernatorial offices, and the so-called presidential ticket, it was clear that so-called judges we demand unofficially from all the parties, because they know that whatever the judgment, whatever the ruling they gave, there will be an appeal. And so many things that have happened to the Nigerian judiciary that does not command respect from many people any longer. There are some judgments that the Nigerian Supreme Court had given that will remain an albatross on them till eternity. Let me give you one significant one. There was a man who governed Delta State. You know him, in this Fourth Republic. When he was challenged up to the Supreme Court, the man who sentenced him, the upper chief area court judge who sentenced him to jail for criminal misappropriation, went to court, even to the Court of Appeal, to say that, to the Supreme Court, that he did. I jailed this man. The Nigerian Supreme Court said the evidence had not been proven. They did not give enough of such matter before the man was jailed in England. He remained an albatross on the Nigerian judiciary under Justice Muhammad Iwais Supreme Court. So many things, unprintable things had happened with the Nigerian judiciary. So it's no more a thing of beauty. That is why a return to a federal system of government will at least initiate our returning to the basics, where because of the recognition that this country is an heterogeneous society with over 350 ethnic groups with their different languages, different customs, different religion, different tradition, different customs, different artifacts, different folklores, different mores, different morals. And you give them free rein, but you meet at the center. It is rubbishing all these varieties that we had and imposing your will, the tradition of one group on the others. That is the crisis, the point of crisis of our nation. And we cannot take off until we draw that map.
Thank you very much, Mr. Opadokun, for your time on the program. Thank you for joining us on NewsNight.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
That's NewsNight today. Thanks for watching. Please feel free to send in your comments on the conversation. Our social media handles are on your screen. You can also listen to this and previous episodes of the program via our podcast. Please visit our website, channelstv.com/podcast to get started. I am Ladi Akeredoluale. Goodbye.